Welcome to Hustle and Flow with Heather Hubbard. You're listening to a special bonus episode. Hi, I'm Heather Hubbard, and I was a litigator, partner, and practice group leader at an AmLaw 200 firm. I know what it takes to rise to the top. I also know all too well the toll it can take on your personal life. So how do you shine bright without burning out? How do you embrace your ambition without selling your soul? You're listening to the Hustle and Flow podcast. Welcome back. I am your host, Heather Hubbard, and we are continuing with our special bonus series of interviews of me from other amazing women. So I want to introduce you to their podcasts and let you hear them interviewing me on different topics. So today, the interview comes from Yashika Dooley's podcast, Fierce Freedom Awaits. Yashika is in my current mastermind. We participated in it together with our own leader, Selena Sue, and we really hit it off, mostly because she is amazing and I made her become my friend. She is actually Dr. Dooley. She is an OBGYN in San Antonio. She got her undergrad at Howard and she went to medical school at Harvard. And she did her residency and continues to be a physician with the United States Air Force. She is truly amazing at absolutely everything she does. And she has a contagious personality. And she actually came and joined my annual mastermind group. We were doing our kickoff in January at a house in Austin, and she came and spent time with us. So I kind of feel like she is part of our family and my masterminders know her well. So I cannot wait to introduce you to her. Like me, she is a professional, but also helps other women. And she really specializes in helping women physicians of color. And part of her podcast is same as mine. It's giving those women the tools that they need to be amazing doctors, as well as, have thriving personal lives that really fill their cups. So today, you're going to be hearing the episode where she interviews me about goals and strategy. But again, it's not me leading it, it's her leading it. So you're probably going to hear something new and get some new ideas that you've not heard before on this podcast. So without further ado, here is the episode with Yashika Dooley from Fierce Freedom Awaits.
Hello, this is the Fierce Freedom Awaits podcast. On this show, it's all about showing up in an authentic way and getting really clear on what you want, and then giving yourself permission to move forward with a clear vision, utilizing all 5 senses and setting up your own strategy pyramid. Not sure what that is? Well, stick around. It's gonna be good.
Welcome to the Fierce Freedom Awaits podcast with Dr. Yashika Dooley, guiding you through simple action steps and tools for a richer, more abundant life.
Hello, and welcome back. Today, we are going to be talking to Heather Hubbard, who is an attorney, and her company, All Rise LLC. She also has a fabulous podcast, Hustle and Flow. And she is all about helping women and underrepresented minorities and attorneys rise, would you say?
Yes,
welcome.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on.
Thanks for coming. So just a little bit of background. Heather is an amazing woman that I met in Selena Sue's mastermind, and I have the pleasure of working with her for the next year, a little less than a year.
Yes.
But she's been fabulous. So I'm honored to have you here.
I'm honored to be on your show.
Thank you. So tell me just a little bit about yourself, how you got started in law and then ended up doing All Rise LLC.
Okay. So when I was in the 3rd grade, this is how far back we have to go. When I was in the 3rd grade, we had a lesson on firsts. And so it was like the first man to walk on the moon, all of that. And so we had to literally draw around our foot and, put up on the bulletin board what we were going to be the first of. And I put I was going to be the first woman president because obviously, why would that not be, what I wanted? And so I went home and I asked my dad, I was like, so Dad, I'm going to be the first woman president. what should I do to make that happen? Right? Like, what's my strategy? And he said very seriously, because he just always dealt with me like that, was just like, well, you should probably become a lawyer.
Oh, well, there you go.
Okay, no problem. So literally I asked for a briefcase for Christmas, and I never took my eyes off the prize. That's how I decided to become a lawyer.
That's awesome. That's a great story. And so then you used to practice litigation. Is that the right terminology?
Yeah. So I did entertainment and intellectual property litigation. So they mostly focused on copyrights, trademarks, some patents. I did a lot in the entertainment space. So a lot of movies, TV shows, music, all of that kind of stuff. And I did that for over a decade. And I was at a really large law firm. And I was also, I was a partner and a practice group leader. So I was, I would oversee a department of all of the litigators in like a few different offices. And so that's what I was doing before I decided to leave and start my own company. So everybody thought I was crazy when I did that, because I was doing really well, and I had reached a point where many people would love to reach and don't get the opportunity. So when I said I was going to go start my own company, a lot of people thought I had literally lost my mind. But I just got to the point where I really wanted to help others. I was helping a ton of people in that practice management role. I was one of the few women ever in management meetings. And it just seemed apparent to me that so many people, especially women and minorities, did not have access to the information that they needed to succeed. And so I just found that like a lot of white men, they were already getting that information because they were playing golf or they were hanging out, they were buddies. And so that information was just handed down. And so they knew how to navigate the politics. They knew how to develop or just receive as a gift a book of business. And women and minorities didn't have that. They were just showing up trying to be really good lawyers. And that does not actually help you succeed.
At all.
Right. So that's when I was like, you know what? I'm helping so many people within my firm with this information, but there's such a lack as a whole. And I was like, I'm just going to go start my own company and help as many attorneys as possible. So that's kind of how that began.
I love that story. And it's so interesting because the more you talk to women in all walks of life, in all professions, it's a very similar theme, a recurring theme, which is one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show, because I feel like a lot of what you teach and talk about on your podcast, on your blog, to your clients is very relevant in medicine. And sometimes it's nice to hear it from a different perspective or have a different shape on that same topic, because you bring new information that oftentimes we haven't even thought of.
I'm a big fan of, going to other industries to learn information, but I think all professional women are in the same boat. And I actually, early on, I was not limited just to attorneys. I was just doing professional women. And I had an ER doctor that was, over 10 years into her practice. And it was very similar. The terminology, right, is different.
Yeah.
So the way you describe what's going on with your own, like within your hospital or whatever, institution you're dealing with, the names are different. It looks a little bit different, but it's the same concept of just how do you manage it all without losing your mind and rise within the institution and the organization when there's just so many barriers in place, implicit and otherwise.
Absolutely. So tell me I know you just had a really great weekend with a group of yours, and you talked a lot about goal setting and kind of things to be doing, how to start that process. So I think that's a great place for us to start.
Okay.
How do you advise people to kind of start this process? Because there's so many ways to do it. What's your way?
So first and foremost, and I assume this is the same in medicine, oftentimes when we get started, we are thinking about all of the possibilities and what do we want to do? What do we want to specialize in? All of that stuff. And we give ourselves a blank slate and we really play around and we explore. And then once you've chosen your profession and you've chosen your specialty, you start to find yourself not allowing yourself to even think about what do I want next? Because it tends to be, well, this path is already laid out for me and it's what I decided, so it's what I have to do. So the first thing that I always say is you've got to get really clear on what you want. And mostly that requires giving yourself permission to even consider what it is you want and to say nothing is off the table. That's really hard for professional women who have been practicing for a while. So that's where we start. And I say, I want you to go out as far as you can. So for some people, that's 1 year. Others, they can do 10 years. But I really encourage people to think about not just titles, but what's going on in your life? How do you want to feel in your life? What do you want more of? What do you want less of? What does that look like? What does that feel like? I really try to get people to tap into all 5 senses so that they have a clear idea of what they're really hoping for. Because in my mind, if we don't start there, if we just start with goals, what's right in front of us, oftentimes we are going for the things that we're told we're supposed to be going for based on where we are in our career. And that's why we often find ourselves reaching our goals, but feeling unfulfilled. It's like, oh, I got that gold star, and yet I still feel the same way.
Yeah. It's like, now what?
Right. And that's where I think a lot of people, they're, so I call it a strategy pyramid, and I call it like getting out of alignment. So you start at the top with your vision, and then you go all the way down to tasks. And I always say, because the way I've got it drawn out is, it's like a pyramid, so it's triangles. But if you don't go to the very top, you plateau. So I'm always saying you got to go all the way to the top. Otherwise, you're going to plateau in your satisfaction and success. So if we start with the vision and get clear on that, that's what allows us to make sure that every small action we take, whether it's a daily action, a monthly action, a yearly action, we know that it supports the bigger vision. And that's what's going to bring us the most happiness at the end of the day as we move forward.
That's good. So let's go back a little bit. So now the first thing you said was you have to do it with all 5 senses. So tell me exactly. So I've got to line item that for me. How should I be looking at this with all 5 senses?
So I have a lot of different exercises to try to tap into this. And so some exercises work better for others. But I often will have people close their eyes. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with this exercise. I certainly did not come up with it on my own. That's called the perfect day.
Oh, no, I haven't heard this.
Okay. And so you just close your eyes. And I generally walk people through a guided visualization. But you want to imagine yourself so many years in advance. And you just think through, what does it look like when you wake up? What does it smell like? What does your feet feel like, right? So like when you get out of the bed, are you putting are you stepping onto hardwoods, a rug, carpet, sand? Whatever it is, like you have complete freedom. Like, what does it feel like? And so like I have people go pick out their clothes. And so I want them to feel the clothes, like, with their hands. Obviously it's in the mind's eye. Yeah. But they're tapping into that. What does your house smell like? What does your work environment smell like? What are you seeing? What are you hearing? What are the noises? I often think when you can try to think through those 5 senses, it really taps into the creative side of the brain, which I don't know about doctors, but lawyers are really bad at being able to do that. So it's a way to go back to your almost imagination. And it allows hopefully this isn't too heady. It allows your soul to speak as opposed to your mind.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. Oftentimes our minds, they trick us.
Yes. Well, our mind does often trick us. Absolutely. And the mind's what throws up the barriers. And so then you don't see what's possible because your mind's like, oh, no, you can't do that.
Exactly. It just gets such, it has tunnel vision and it says, here's what's possible and here's what's not possible. Based on a prior experience, I know that you cannot do that. And so it just shuts it down. So that's why I try to tap into those 5 senses.
So now that I have so you tell them to tap in their 5 senses and they kind of go through this day. So then what? What are they like if they are thinking about this ideal life, this ideal day? And for me, sometimes some of the things aren't actually at all in line with what I do now. So now I'm like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Where do we go?
Yeah. So this live event that I just did, it's called Life and Law Live in Phoenix. We're moving through that and, someone will start to cry. Right. And my intention is not to make anyone cry, but it's a wake up call that what they really want is not in any way aligned or reflected in what they're doing now. And I think the crying is not the awareness. It's the fear of they're stuck and they can never accomplish what they want.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, especially if you're like mid-career. I mean, I think early in career, everything's possible. You don't care. You're not highly invested in any one thing. And so you can switch, you can move, you can do this, you can do that. By mid-career, you feel like you've reached a level of achievement. And if you move over to something else, you feel like you're stepping back or you're regressing. You lose it all. Absolutely.
I see so many women where they're like, I worked so hard for this. So one, what does it even mean if I'm no longer a doctor or a lawyer? No one can take that away from you, but we have this fear that they can, even if, your license is gone, right? Like if you're disbarred, whatever, I'm not sure what they would call it. Is it your licensure is revoked?
Yeah. Or you lose your certification. Yeah. Same thing.
I mean, you still went through, right? Like that's still part of who you are. But there's just this fear of if I lose my identity because it's who we become, and I start to do something different, well, I'll have to build my reputation all over again. Yeah. And what if it was a fluke the first time, right? So if we have imposter syndrome, it's like I was somehow able to convince all of these people that I knew what I was doing and that I was good at this. Mm-hmm. What if I can't do that the second go round? And then I can never go back, right? Like it's never an option again. And I end up homeless and alone on the streets because that is where we go in our minds, even though
all the way.
Yeah. I'm in a gutter. No one loves me and I have no money.
Yes. Well, and I think for physicians, especially, you spend so long, all of your 20s and even a good portion of your 30s, just getting to the point where you can actually practice independently as a physician, that you really do lose everything else. I mean, for me, I forgot, do I like to read regular books? What's a regular book even look like? I forgot that I had hobbies. I forgot that I like to cook and that I like to run and all of these other things because I had given them all up because I just didn't have time,
right.
And so then when all of a sudden I have time, I don't even remember what I like. I'm like, can I do anything outside of medicine? I haven't done anything outside of medicine for 10 years. What does that look like? It's very scary.
Yeah. I mean, to this day, I can't tell you what my hobbies are. Like that's confusing to me.
Yeah. It's a foreign concept. You're like, hobby? Huh. Right. I don't know.
Right. People have those.
Yes. And they have time to do those on a active basis. That's interesting.
Right. Yeah. Right. Exactly.
So you go through this. I've thought about my ideal day, my ideal life. For many of us, we see that it doesn't completely align with what we're doing right now. And so now where do we go? What should I be then thinking about?
Yeah. So the next thing is pretty easy. You just say, well, where am I now? And that would seem obvious, but sometimes we don't actually check in. So if you know what you're wanting to achieve, and you say, okay, well, compared to what that is now, or compared to what I want, where am I now? Mm-hmm. And it allows you to figure out where the gap is for each and everything. And some things it's not too far off. Others, it seems like forever away. And so once you know where the gap is, you can start figuring out, well, how do I close it? And the thing is, you don't have to close it in 1 year. You don't have to close it in 5 years. As long as you're making progress towards what you really want, then you're going to slowly make progress towards it and you're going to get better aligned, right? So that's the key, is to figure out, okay, well, what's the best route? And for some people, that means what's the fastest route.
Yeah.
For others, it means what's the safest route. I always compare it to, if you were going to climb a mountain. I have asthma. So I may not say what's the most direct route. I don't want the steep route.
Right.
I want the slow winding route because that's the best one for me. And so that's where you have to be able to say, my path is unique and it's what's best for me. But as long as I know where I am and where I'm going, and I am deciding the path to get there, then I can feel confident and empowered in knowing that I am not stuck. And I'm not going to wake up one day and regret the decisions I've made about my life.
Yeah. And so I like the fact that you're like looking at everything globally. So it's not just in my workplace, it's everything. Because I think that sometimes is the key. We make a lot of goals for me, like inside the hospital. It's all very clinically related. Yeah. Not so much, I feel like, in my personal life. I mean, and so how do you talk through that with them? How do you tell them to look at it all? Because I think that's really sometimes is a disconnect for people. Like what you want at home or in your personal life may or may not line up with what you're saying you want in your professional life.
Right. So I think everything has to be integrated. And, I do know some men who have the privilege of compartmentalizing their lives. I don't know any women who have that. Privilege.
Yeah.
So if you're basically on call 24/7, more or less, right? Like it's hard to ever fully check out. And the same as when you're at work, like home is still there, right? Everything kind of goes together. When you start saying, okay, I'm going to have professional goals, I'm going to have personal stuff, it doesn't work because it's all connected at this point, especially digital, right? Like that takes it to another level as well. Yeah. So I think you have to look at it from an integrated perspective with every single thing you're doing. And it's when we really separate those out that we really start to have burnout. We start to have boredom. We aren't fulfilled and we don't know how to accomplish it because we've cut off an entire area of our life. We have a hard time compartmentalizing and saying, I'm going to do this now and this later. We tend to just cut an entire piece off.
Yeah, that's actually quite true. Well, because you're like, I can't do both. So which one do I want to do more? Okay, I'll take this one and the other one falls to the wayside.
Right. So learning to integrate them all and seeing how they all fit together, in my opinion, is what is really going to allow professional women to stay in the game and do it in a way that feels good, right? So it's kind of the success on your own terms concept as opposed to trying to model it after some, if your mentor, let's say, is a man, you're probably not going to be able to have his life just because those aren't your circumstances. Right. And so being able to say, how do I do this on my own, even when I've not seen it replicated, and not falling into the trap that something isn't possible just because someone before you hasn't done it. Yeah. That's really the key. And I think we have to take a holistic approach to figure that out.
And so as the women then go through this process, so do you have them kind of line item very specifically what they want so that they can get that foundation? I mean, I know you talk about kind of this, making sure you're hitting every level. So how do you take them through that to make sure? Because I feel like sometimes your mind is your plateau. Like you can't even see the top because your mind has already maxed you out and it was like, well, you'll never accomplish that. So don't even put that on the list.
Yeah. No. So we start with like, you're not allowed to censor yourself, right? On the vision, you're not allowed to censor yourself. And then we go to, okay, well, based on where I am to where I want to be, what are the common themes? What are the common themes that kind of show up over and over again? Because even if you have like 50 different line items, they probably fall within like 5 themes. Yeah. And then you say, okay, if any one of those, if I just focused on it, what would have the biggest impact? And so that's where you start to whittle down your strategy. And that is a really complicated topic. So it might be hard to cover in a podcast. But once you have that, then you can say, okay, now that I know how I'm going to try to achieve this, what are my annual goals? And then my process is I like people to have monthly goals, weekly planning, and daily action. So that's where the system really comes into, you're not going to ever be able to just find time to do this stuff.
Yeah.
Because we're so busy. So if you don't have a system in place that supports small daily action, then, you'll be at the next year saying, here are all the things I want to change about my life. And you might be excited about it for a few weeks. And then, come February, we're back to where we were the year before.
Yeah. I like that. I've never heard it said in that way. So having like those big goals, but then breaking it down into kind of, what did you say? You called it monthly?
Yeah. So monthly, you should have like 1 to 3 goals. I always say 3 is way too many, but a lot of women are like, I have to have more than one. So you have those goals. And then each and every week you identify the big projects that are going to get you closer to that goal. And then each and every day you say, okay, what are the tasks that I can do to support that? So maybe it's just one. Maybe you're just doing one thing each day, but you're intentional. And if you just do daily, then you get too much in the weeds.
Yeah.
If you're just doing weekly, you'll find yourself planning every Sunday or Monday, but never doing anything throughout the week. And same with monthly. So the idea is, how can you put a structure in place that's pretty easy? Right? Like the planning piece doesn't take more than 5 minutes, but it keeps you moving forward. Because what I find, if you take small, consistent action over time, you will be amazed. Yeah. Amazed at how much you accomplish. And if you're keeping it aligned with like the strategy and vision, that's where you're not just going after goals because it's the thing right in front of you. It's because it's supporting that bigger vision that you want for your life. Yeah.
And I think that's probably one of the problems that I've often come up against is you start just kind of putting down a lot of like random tasks, but they may or may not line up with the bigger goal. So then you kind of feel like you're on this hamster wheel again. I've got lots of things to do and I'm running. And and sometimes you're even checking things off your list, but if it's not moving you towards your goal, you feel like, I'm not really sure what I've accomplished. I've spent all day doing these things, but really have nothing to show for it.
Yes. Okay. So the system that I have a planner, a physical planner that I just introduced this year. And when I was testing it with a group and they were like, there's not enough room for to-dos. Like I need more things I need more lines.
I need more space.
To which I said, what, for you to just then like copy it over the next day? Because you can't get through that list and you're not prioritizing if you need room for 20 things. Like I want you to only write down the things that absolutely have to get done, either in terms of your work or it's going to move you forward. Yeah. So, and that's a hard concept because we're super hard. We're so in that I just have so much to do.
Yes.
But checking that box, I think it gives us a bit of like a dopamine hit, but
it does.
I don't know that it necessarily means our lives are going to improve because we're checking those boxes.
Yeah, that's nice. So then you can really move the needle, but you move it in a way that it's meaningful and it's in alignment with what your bigger goals were set up for. So that's nice.
And it's doable because like you're chunking it down into such bite-sized pieces that it doesn't feel overwhelming. Like you don't need a ton, like you don't need a lot of extra time. We don't have time. So it's no time. It's not asking you to do, to carve out more. It's just asking you to prioritize a few things each day. And that is totally doable.
And then do you ever have people come up and say, it's not working, or I've done all the steps that you told me to, but I'm still not getting it done? Or maybe things have changed. Like what I thought, like these 5 tasks that I thought were going to get me to this goal actually didn't work, or something's off. I don't know what it is, but something's just not working.
Yeah. Okay. So there are a few on that one. First, I don't have people tell me the process doesn't work. What I have people tell me is, like with any habit, it works when I work it and it doesn't when I don't. So I do have people say, I will find that I get out of the habit of planning my priorities each day, and then my day goes to crap. And then
quickly,
I feel overwhelmed. I'm stressed out. I have all this anxiety, and then I'm in this panic mode. And then I'm like, wait, I've not been following the process. But two, I do have people say, I don't feel like this is working for me, right? Like, so I want to switch gears. And that's where I say, well, how long have you been testing it? Right? Because I think there's a part of us when things get hard or we can't see immediate results, we want to move on to the next bright, shiny object. Yeah. Because it just feels good. It feels better. And so I always say for at least a month, you need to stick with what you're doing, right? Give it time to actually pay off. I would prefer even longer than a month. That doesn't mean that in the moment you can't be, depending on what this is, shifting. But when you're changing things all the time, you don't really know what's working and what's not working. So you've got to give it a fair shot. The other thing that sometimes happens is you'll have like some kind of unexpected personal crisis, and that tends to impact your vision sometimes. And so for people that like map something out for a full year, they've got their strategy, they've got their goals, and then, you know, your child gets diagnosed with cancer, or your spouse dies, or, you know, you're in a bad, accident. And I mean, there's any number of things that totally, life just comes at you and you're not prepared for it. And it shifts who you are inside. Mm-hmm. And so what you wanted yesterday may not actually be what you want tomorrow. And that's where you just have to give yourself a bit of grace to say, I get to choose my vision. And in the same way that like when I decided I'm going to go to medical school, when I decided I'm going to go into a certain specialty, in the same way that I can change my mind about those things, I can change my mind about anything else. So just because I said it was my vision doesn't mean that it can't change if my circumstances change, or, you know, I want to do something differently.
And so how do you help those that are kind of mid-career, where it's already very hard for them because they feel like they don't have enough time to shift, or that they're going to lose momentum, or they're going to lose everything? How do you talk them through it? Because I feel like for them, it's even harder. They feel like, okay, I've already made this. If they could make a major change, I've already made a major change, and now I'm still kind of lost. I don't know what to do. And time's passing me by. It's kind of what you feel like.
You know, most people that, and that is honestly, that's the vast majority of women that I work with. That's where they are in their careers. I find there are two types. There's the type of woman who feels completely stuck and wants a way out, but doesn't actually want to work through the stuff.
Yeah. That's not fun.
To get the result. Right. So like they refuse to make decisions, and they say, I'm going to wait to make the perfect decision when the timing is right. And what I say is you actually are making decisions. Even though you think you're not making a decision, you are making a decision.
Right.
And so with that person, quite frankly, it's just really hard to coach them through anything. And so I feel for them and I want to help them. But oftentimes, I mean, if I'm being honest, they say they're ready, but they're not ready. Yeah. And so I just patiently wait for them and hope that they realize that they have more power than they believe.
Right.
For the women who want the change, but still have the stories in their mind, because we all do.
Yes.
As long as they're willing to take that small, consistent action, that's how I help them move out of it. So like, you don't have to change your mind today. You don't have to change your story today. But if you're open to believing that your story might not be correct, that maybe your mind is playing tricks on you, you got to be open to it. And you're willing to do like one small thing a day to get you closer to seeing the truth so that you can make decisions. Mm-hmm. That person, like, it's just the small, consistent action.
Yeah. I think that's good. And then do you find that even just having that community of women sometimes is really also very helpful? Like, for me, being in this mastermind group, I mean, just being surrounded by women who get it is helpful, and they give me very frank help and details and feedback.
Yeah. So, I think a few things happen. One, we feel like we've got to act like we've got it together all the time.
Yeah.
So we show up personally and professionally without letting anyone know that maybe we're struggling. And two, we don't always know who to trust, right? So even, you look at your colleagues and you might be friendly with them, but you don't know, can I really tell them I'm not happy, because are they going to go tell someone else, right? We have those fears. And then three, we often think that we're the only person going through this.
Yeah.
I assume doctors are the same way. Lawyers often will come to me and be like, I thought I was the only one. They literally have no idea that everyone feels this way, but they think that they're so alone and isolated because, again, our public persona comes off very different than what's going on the inside. And so surrounding yourself with a community where you can have those frank conversations is just what's life-changing. So that's what I love, my live event that I just did. These women came from all over the country. They didn't know each other, but they all left as friends. And they now have someone they can pick up the phone and call. They're not their friend. They're not their family. They're not their colleague. It's someone that they can just get feedback from, honest feedback.
Right.
And so I've always participated I've participated in masterminds since I started my business. And that's why I lead so many. And they're just for lawyers, because I want to give women that community to see that they're not alone. And collectively, we are so much stronger and smarter than we ever could be on our own.
Yeah. That's a really good thing. And so any other next steps? I feel like you've kind of really gone through kind of that process. But for those who feel like, I don't know, maybe they get off track or they feel like they've failed as they lead in, kind of what's the reset point? What do you say? Okay, let's refocus. This is what you need to do now.
Yep. I always say it's kind of like meditation. When you're meditating, the idea is it's not that your mind stops having thoughts. It's simply that when you catch it, going off on a tangent, you just bring it back to the focal point. And that's the same thing. And with meditation, it's non-judgmental. So it's non-judgmental awareness. So I'm always saying, bring this to anything you do, whether it's, in your profession, setting goals. So if you find that you completely got overwhelmed by your firefighting, you're in the ER, you're dealing, and you're even if you're not in the ER, right? You suddenly were just putting out fires all day long and you're like, crap, I've not even looked at my priorities for 3 days or 3 months.
Yeah.
Non-judgmental. Don't beat yourself up. Immediately forgive yourself and move on. Just non-judgmental. But you had the awareness that you lost focus. And then you just bring it back to the focal point and you start over. And if you need to do that 3 times a day, 3 times a week, whatever that looks like, that's fine. It's the practice of non-judgmental awareness and coming back to the focal point that's going to keep you on track.
That's good. And then tell me one more time, let's talk about the triangle. So tell me how they look at this and how they should be using this. I'm going to have to put this in the show notes because I'm a visual person. Yeah. I think that might also help them, but go over that one more time, just as we're wrapping up here. Yeah.
So you have your vision at the very top and that is it's a true pyramid and triangle. So you want to always have your full triangle. So that lets you know where you're supposed to begin. I always say kind of rise up. So you've got your vision, and then you've got under that, you've got a layer that's strategy. So if you're in strategy without vision, you're plateauing. But if you've got vision on top, you're back to a pyramid. So then under that, you have your goals. And then under that, you have projects. And under that, you have tasks. And so I say most people start at the task level.
Yes.
Where you're just busy all the time.
Yeah. Doing.
Yep. But you got a huge plateau.
Yeah.
Huge. So the idea is that you got to start from the top and work down.
Okay. I like that. That's nice. And so that fully aligns with having everything broken down from, years out, months, weeks, days, and it's all right there.
Yes, but you don't have to figure it out all at once, right? So if you had to figure out that plan to begin with, you would get so overwhelmed you wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
Which is why each month, each week, you are just dealing with like a 5-minute planning of what's next. Like you don't have to see the full picture. You know where you are, you know where you're going, you know how you're going to try to get there. Mm-hmm. But you chunk it down into where you are in the moment. You don't have to map it all out right now.
Right.
Because things are going to change anyway, right? So keep it small and just stay focused on small daily action.
That's good. I like that. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. We are going to have to include some of that because a lot of it is very visual in our show notes, and we'll have that for everybody. But I really appreciate you coming on and talking to us, and you have so much more information to give. So we'll have to have you on again. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's been so much fun. And I'm so glad that I get to spend a whole year with you and our mastermind.
Look, I'm saying a year and beyond. You're not getting rid of me after this year.
Oh, definitely not. Absolutely not.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Bye.
Bye.
So what did you think about that strategy pyramid? Can you envision your goals with all the steps that you'll need to take over the next few weeks, months, and maybe even years just to get it done? Can you craft a new identity utilizing the very qualities that make you great in your current role? Just know that being intentional, having a clear vision, and knowing exactly where you see yourself personally and professionally really is the key. But get clear on what you want. That's going to be the first step for everything in life. Success is grounded on clarity. Regardless of where you are in your career, never feel that it's too late to change course, and just redirect your path with something that is more aligned with your desire and goals. I hope you enjoyed the show.
I hope you enjoyed that episode. Dr. Yashika Dooley is absolutely amazing. Go subscribe to her podcast, Fierce Freedom Awaits. We will put that link in the show notes for you. And if you know any other physicians, definitely recommend that they listen to her podcast. And if you know physicians, women of color, encourage them to go check out the website elonwomenenterprise.com. She is hosting a Women of Color Physicians event in September of this year. And I've been talking to her. I know what she's putting together. It is absolutely going to be amazing. So be sure to spread the word to your friends. They're going to want to be there. So send them that link, elonwomenenterprise.com. Again, we will put that in the show notes for you. Thanks so much for listening, and I will be back with a new episode for you next week. I am super excited to announce that the Life and Law Planner is officially here. It is more than just a calendar. It is a full planning system. If you want to take back your days, your weeks, your months, and your year, order your planner now. It will completely change your life and help you accomplish your biggest goals. There's only a limited quantity available, so go to lifeandlawplanner.com and order yours today.